I think something that we don't talk about enough, because I've given this a lot of thought, is the fact that we all recognize there's a playbook that most of these people follow.
Yeah.
And we tend to talk a lot about the abuse, the aftermath, the healing. And I think everyone tends to just ask the question, why didn't you leave? Why did you stay? Why did you put up with the abuse? And I think there's a disconnect there, especially for people that are healthy or somewhat healthy, because they can't grasp it.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I really would love to focus on the love bombing part. So a lot of people think that they know what love bombing is. They think it's where a person just comes into your life and they just say, oh my gosh, you're my soulmate, you're my twin flame, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And that's really not what encompasses love bombing. So a lot of these people that are very manipulative and psychological, they have a knowing and an understanding that people at their core have insecurities. And when they start getting to know you, they will ask all the pertinent questions. How did you grow up? What's your relationship like with your family? And what they're doing is they're studying you. And so when they find out what your insecurities are, that's when they decide to come in and use whatever tactics that they need to use in order to relieve you of those insecurities. So if you feel fat, this person is going to tell you, oh my gosh, there is nothing wrong with you. I don't know why you feel this way. As a matter of fact, I want you to walk around with as little clothing as possible. And you'll feel so insecure because you're not used to that. But you will get used to them saying, you are absolutely beautiful. You're not fat. You are beautiful in every way. I love every role that is on you. I know your body like nobody else. And they will stay on this and perpetuate it for long periods of time until you actually start to believe it yourself. You will actually start going, you know what, maybe they're right. And this person really does love me. They actually see me. They get it. And they make you feel like somehow everybody else has gotten it wrong. And they instill a sense of confidence and acceptance. And that is what bonds you to this person, because you suddenly feel safe, you feel seen, you feel heard. And then right when the relationship has been solidified and you've put your trust and confidence in them, is when they pull the rug out from underneath you. But they don't do it immediately. They do it slowly. It's very insidious. So a lot of people get it twisted about what the love bombing is. It's not a short-term thing, and it's not just a bunch of compliments. It's way deeper than that.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of ironic that you mentioned about the questions that are asked and what I received based upon what you were saying is that the questions are asked not from a genuine place to get to know who the other individual is, but more so it's an investigation. That's basically what I received from what you were saying. And so with that being said, because these are general questions that any person that you're interested in, that you would ask them, like, where you're from, where's your family from? Because you want to kind of know about their family. So I think that, like you said, that's pretty insidious to do something like that. And so with that love bombing, part of it also is, like you're saying, it could be affirmation, but would you say some of it could be giving as far as gifts and intimacy? And do you see it that way, or you do?
As far as what they do?
Yes.
Yeah, so these are people that they're focused on control.
Okay.
So they feel powerful. They feel validated when they are able to control other people. So they will use whatever tactics necessary. If you are a person that comes to the table and you say, I've always given other people gifts and people have never really given me gifts, or I've always put thought into the gifts that I give people and people don't seem to do that to me, they're going to listen to that and then they're going to try to do that.
Okay.
The playbook is very simple, but when you get into the details, that's where you see the toxicity and the evil and the conniving and the insidiousness of it all. It's very calculated. It's very conniving.
Yeah, because you mentioned just a few minutes ago about the manipulation. Everything it's being done as a form of controlling the whole situation. But I mentioned that a little bit yesterday, that when we're in these relationships, if it's the type of thing that there's a lot of arguments, or a lot of because a lot of those discussions are postures. I look at it as a form of posturing, where someone is trying to gain a level of control, and so it's done through triangulation, other stories or examples that they might tell, and so the manipulation it can go for long periods of time. But can you talk a little bit more about the manipulation? Do you have any stories that you would share with us concerning that?
I have some terrible stories.
Yes, share. I mean, that's let's. People are hungry. People are hungry for this wisdom so that they don't fall in these same traps.
Yeah. So what I would say is, a lot of this comes from the abuse and the trauma that you endure earlier on in life. And, I'm going to be honest, there was a time when I would see battered women and I just couldn't understand it. I had always been the kind of person that if I got into a relationship and they started doing things I didn't like, I would leave. It really was that simple. And I looked at these people and I thought, I kind of looked down on them, to be honest, because I thought, why would you allow someone to do that to you?
Yeah.
And the way that God deals with me is when I judge somebody, he puts me in those shoes. so I have to be very careful. But what I learned is, a lot of times the way that we make up for the trauma that we've been through, people tend to go two different routes. One will become an extreme giver and the other will become an extreme taker.
Okay.
And we will want relationships to work out so bad. We will want people to love us so bad that we will just give and give and give to the point of exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
And we never check it, right? Because we're just holding on for dear life. And what you end up learning is that that's not healthy. You think that you're doing something good because you're giving and you're trying to help people and you're trying to love people, but that's not healthy.
Yeah.
And you pay for it. So it's not just the takers that pay for it, it's the givers that pay for it too. I didn't realize it took a lot of therapy and a lot of introspection for me to understand what my contribution to this relationship was. It took a lot of time alone. This is a walk that you have to do alone. Leaning on other people, wanting help from other people, getting advice from other people, that has to take a back seat to your healing. I'm not saying that you don't want therapy. Obviously, I did therapy. I'm still in therapy. I probably will be for the rest of my life. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm actually really proud of that. We go to the gym to take care of our bodies. We go to church to take care of our souls and whatever. So I feel like, you know, having therapy is exercise for your mind. So I highly recommend that.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I appreciate your energy, if that makes any sense, because you're like real chilled, and it's like, to me it's subtle, but it's powerful for me, just to see, because I can relate to what you said a few minutes ago about having a judgmental mind concerning certain things. And that's something my grandfather mentioned to me a long time ago when I was a very young kid, is that you should never judge another person's situation, because you never know if you'll be in that same one somewhere down the road. And so you made me go back to that. And yeah, and so my mind goes to, because I'm trying to say, how do we prevent ourselves from getting, what would be steps that you would say? Like, do you have certain steps that you're doing or that you would do before or during while you're trying to get into another relationship? What are certain steps that you would do to try to prevent from meeting someone else like that?
So that's not an easy answer.
Okay.
You know, if you have endured any kind of trauma, especially growing up, it is so critical that you deal with that. See, I'm 55, and so the stuff that's going around now is very new to me. When I got out of my childhood, the general consensus and the advice that I was given was to put it behind me.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I did. And unfortunately, I went on to seek partners that were very bad for me, because subconsciously I was looking for what I had received all the years prior, which was people that were emotionally unavailable. I actually needed the opposite, but they felt oddly familiar.
Yeah.
And we like things that feel comfortable. So when you get around a person and you're healthy, that's fine. It works, because healthy is what's familiar to you. When you've had trauma and any kind of toxicity in your past, you're going to get around people and you're going to feel comfortable around them, but it's not a good thing for you. And you'll never break out of that, or you'll be like me and you'll break out of it later on in life, and you'll look back at all the years lost that you can't get back because you never took the time to heal. And I think the young people now are really lucky, because the narrative now is heal, get therapy, learn to love yourself. This is being projected all over the world.
Yeah.
And I love that, because I don't ever regret what I went through, and I don't regret the timing, because I know that the Lord is in it and it happened the way that it did for a reason. But I am happy for the younger generations. I think a lot of the toxicity is being talked about. It's being discussed all over the world. And therapy and healing and learning to love yourself is really talked about a lot. And it makes me happy for the younger generations.
So I'm going to ask you again. Okay. What are some things? You answered part of the question, and I'm not looking for a certain answer, but I'm saying, if you were talking to your younger self, because you met this person was in your life for an extended period of time?
6 years.
Oh, 6 years. Okay. So if you met yourself at 48 or whatever it was, 49, or what are some things that you would walk into that scenario with now as comparison to back then? What would be the difference in mindset and whatever?
So there's just certain things, I guess, that I would offer that I've learned, which is never rush into anything.
Mm-hmm.
Usually people that don't truly love you or care about you want things to move fast.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I would say is watch and listen. I was so naive and childlike in some ways that I just wanted to have a good time. I wanted to talk. I wanted to laugh. I didn't realize that, this was kind of an interview. Are you worthy of being in my energy, in my space? That's, people need to be vetted. And I didn't think about that. And so I didn't watch and I didn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I gave him everything that he needed to take me down. I told him everything that I wanted, everything that I loved, everything that I hoped for. I mean, I served myself up on a platter for this guy. So I would say watching and listening.
Mm-hmm.
Never move too fast. We're watching that in social media right now with a content creator that met a guy and got married and is pregnant in less than 8 months, and it has all fallen apart, and it's turned out that he was not what he seemed. So I would say patience, taking your time, vetting people to see if they are worthy. And I think sometimes when people hear me say that, they don't know how to take that, because what does that mean? Are they worthy? Well, you know what? You have worth. You have value, even if you don't know it, even if you don't believe it. And so, yeah, you need to vet people, because not everyone is good for you. Not everyone in this world is a good person.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a long time to understand that, because when I was growing up, what I was told is everybody has a good heart.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have just been through tough things. No, that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody sees the world the way that you do. Not everybody has the same heart that you do. And I had to find out that I was projecting my beliefs onto the general public. When I was doing that, I was making assumptions. So people definitely need to be vetted. I would say nowadays we have so many resources available to us.
Mm-hmm.
You have therapy where you can go to a person that's not in your life and you can say, I just met this person. This is how it's going. This is what I know about them. What do you think? I'm also noticing, because I'm very interested in artificial intelligence, as most of us are, is that you can actually send texts, conversations to AI and say, what do you think about this conversation? Does it seem genuine? Are you picking anything up about this conversation? And that's really interesting to me. But also, I would say go with your gut. My gut has never been wrong. I just doubted it. And that was the worst thing I could have done, because my gut was telling me years before it was over, my gut was telling me something's not okay here. And I remember I kept asking him, I kept saying, something's not right. There's something, and you're not telling me. And I know it, because it won't leave me alone. And this guy ended up sending me an article from the New York Times about how people misunderstand what they're feeling and they think it's their gut, and it's not.
Jeez, that is,
So there's a story.
wow. That is horrible. Wow. Um, People, some individuals on the live might not understand what you mean by vetting. I do, but I would rather I would ask that you kind of explain to them what do you mean when you say vetting.
So if you had your own company and you were going to hire employees,
Mm-hmm.
you would ask them a series of questions. You would Spend time with them and see how they handle themselves in order to make sure that they're the proper fit for your company as an employee. Whether that be, do they have a good attitude? Do they have a comprehension of this business? How do they deal with stress? So, same thing with a relationship. So, how does this person handle stress? When you see that they are having to deal with a situation that's not that great, whether it be with friends, whether it be with family, how do they react? How do they handle themselves? When you say no, the first time you say no to them about something, how do they react? How do they deal with that? How do they react when something changes at the last minute? These are all things that you need to get to know about a person. I used to think that love was everything. And I had to learn the hard way that it just isn't enough. It really isn't. Um, you know, Love is something that should be cared for and handled gently. Um, you need to be able to give that person what they need, and they need to be able to give you what you need. There should be some reciprocity. There should be some kindness, some gentleness. Of course, couples are going to argue and have misunderstandings and things like that, but it's are you okay with how they handle you and how they handle situations? Because that's going to tell you a lot about a person.
So what was that journey? What did the journey look like for you, regaining belief in your intuition?
So basically, here's another part of the story for me. So this person began to abuse me, and it got worse when we decided to move in with each other. I didn't understand why. It didn't make any sense to me, but the reason why was because he could no longer hide what he was doing secretly. And wait, I think I may have skipped it. Ask me the question again.
I was asking about your intuition. What was the because for me that was a process for me, regaining, I'll say, the connection into my intuition, because I did similar to you, to basically what you just explained. I continued to deny that internal voice, and but it was a process for me to get back to, because when it's almost, I look at it like, there's a fire and you're taking something and you're beating that fire out. And when you beat that fire of intuition out, it's a process of gaining back to a place where you trust your intuition. So how did you learn how to start trusting that voice, that internal voice within you?
I learned the hard way.
Okay.
But thank you for repeating it. I have ADHD sometimes, so I thought I heard you, but then I doubted myself. Anyways, so what happened with me is he ended up going to jail for domestic violence. And while he was in jail, I realized that I had a unique opportunity to do some investigative work, because now he couldn't intervene. And pretty much what I thought was going on, but there was also stuff that I had no idea about. And I got slammed in the face with reality. And that was when I realized that my gut was correct. There were things going on behind the scenes, and he was not being honest with me. And of course, at that point, I really beat myself up, because I wish I had listened, because I wouldn't have stayed as long. I wouldn't have moved in with him.
Yeah.
So that was kind of confirmation. It felt like that was God going, yeah, You could have avoided a lot, but you decided that you didn't need to listen to me. So here you go. How's it feel?
Yeah. And you just mentioned a phase that many of us we slip into unaware that we're unaware of. When we're in the place of denial, it it's a place of not wanting to accept what energetically, spiritually, and intellectually that we know is going on. And I was going to ask you another question. So I got distracted by your answer, but I was going to ask you another question. You talked about time alone. Talk to us a little bit about time alone, because I'm a firm believer, and that's one of the keys to gaining a level of who you are, and which will enable you to kind of transition and move on with your life.
Yeah. So something that I haven't said. I went through a lot of trauma growing up. Neither one of my parents wanted me. And so I went through a lot, more than most in the United States, anyways. And I tried my best when I became an adult to do better. And in some ways, I did do better. You know, I broke 2 generational cycles in just raising my children. And I'm really proud of that. But there were a lot of things that I didn't know about, like trauma responses that affect your relationships with other people, and they affect how you perceive the world.
True. True.
And it's really interesting because you can think that you're operating like a normal human being when you're really not.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll take time for different relationships to mirror back to you that something wasn't right. And so I got into therapy, and it was brought to my attention that I had a lot of these trauma responses. And that can really put you on shaky ground because it can make you feel like you don't really know yourself. And it causes a lot of self-doubt. For instance, I didn't realize that I was hypervigilant, and that is a trauma response.
True.
I can go into a room, and I used to think that this was a gift, but I'll go into a room and I can pick up on the energy super fast.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell immediately who likes me, who doesn't like me. And that sounds good, but what happens is you'll sabotage certain things because you think you know, but then you'll doubt yourself. And so you're causing preemptive stress and preemptive difficulties because you do. I had prided myself on this for the longest time. I was like, oh, I can read the room. But there were a lot of things that I needed to work out. And I just truly believe, according to my journey, that the best thing that you can do is, if at all possible, isolate yourself. A lot of us aren't given the choice. I truly believe that God isolated me because he was like, okay, this is it. This is what needs to happen. Some people are able to choose it because they're smarter than me. But it's just different. It's different when you stay alone and spend time with yourself, because that's going to reveal a lot about you. There are a lot of us that depend on other people more than we know.
Mm-hmm.
We depend on other people for validation, for love, for all kinds of things. And we don't realize just how much we rely on that. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but for me and my journey on the road to getting to love myself, I had to spend time alone.
Okay.
And that may not be true for everyone, but that's my story. And you know, I think a lot of us have heard that if you really want to be happy, you will learn to love yourself and you'll learn to love your own company. And I think some of us hear it and we think we know what that looks like, but we really don't. To get to a place where you enjoy your own company and you can't wait to spend time with yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about one night.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, could you be alone for 3 months and really enjoy your own company?
Mm-hmm.
There is happiness in that. There's a happiness in that someone else cannot take away from you, that nobody else can control. And I truly believe that that's how it's supposed to be, at least for me. I think God wants me to love myself as much as he loves me. And I know that that's impossible, but I think that he does want me to love myself and really have my own self-worth and self-value that nobody else can manipulate, that nobody else can give or take away. I think that's where true joy and happiness is found.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing with us, this information, because I just believe that it's similar to, like you said earlier, is that a lot of people that are coming after us, there's certain information that if they're aware of it, it can help them to not fall into these same traps. Because just like yourself, like I wasn't aware of, and it was because of my heart, because of my mind, because of the way I was raised. I wasn't aware, like similar to you when you said it, that people were inherently good or bad. I thought that because everybody around me were good people. So I didn't have an experience of shystiness, manipulation, or whatever you want to call it, until actually getting out into business and relationships and all these other things. And but it was through that that a lot of the lessons that I needed to learn that were part of my life were learned. Were there any good times? Was it just the love bombing phase? But when you think back, were there any good times at all?
I have kind of a mentor or somebody that I've followed, and I love what he says. He says, I never had one good year. So there are good times, but they're very few and far between, and they're fleeting.
Okay.
These people tend to ruin vacations. I mean, they're just miserable.
Mm-hmm.
They're just miserable. And most of them do not love themselves.
True.
A lot of them hate themselves.
True.
They're deeply insecure.
True.
They feel powerless. And so how they make up for that, mm-hmm. and how they're able to just live is by controlling other people and trying to get people into the same state that they're in, but I can't really throw all the shade his way, because there were things that were toxic about me that I needed to fix. Had I been healthy, I wouldn't have. Something that I realized is when you love someone to that degree, it's unhealthy and it's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt you. That kind of love was not meant, in my opinion, to be had between humans. That kind of unconditional love is for God. That's my belief. I think you should never lose yourself in a relationship with someone. When you do, you're getting into some very scary territory. This is how people lose lives. It's very toxic on both sides. I think when I was growing up, I saw all these fairy tales, and somewhere in my head, I believed that, you know, I needed my person to be my ride or die. I wanted this person to be the air that I had to have. I wanted to feel like I couldn't live without this person and that person couldn't live without me. That's very toxic. That is extremely toxic. And I did not know that. Relationships are not meant to look like that. Yes, you can love someone with your whole heart and want the best for them, but it should never require losing yourself completely to where you're not getting what you need, to where you are abandoning yourself.
True.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I actually thought that I was being the most amazing partner ever in the world.
Yeah, and so you hit on some valuable points. You know, even the thought of or the mindset of, because these people present themselves as very confident, very you know, charismatic and different things like that, but you know, they have a lot of insecurities, and one of them is they're very insecure. That's why many times they seek a lot of exterior attention. And yeah, the codependency. Yeah, that's codependency, and that's part of what happens many times. And this is just something that popped in my brain. You know, love is packaged to look like, similar to, like you said, trauma or some kind of codependence instead of what it actually is. And you have anything else that's on your mind that you think that you would want to share with people before we leave, or? And but I do want to ask you, what was, before you answer that, what were certain lessons or certain things that you learned through your journey? Was there like a certain lessons that were highlighted for you that you learned? You mentioned a couple things, but like your intuition, you mentioned that. But were there some other things?
I think one that stands out to me is, for some reason, I had this misconception that once you committed to someone, that was it.
True.
Like, I'm going to love you forever.
Yeah. Yeah. I was the same thing. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really not healthy.
Yeah.
So a relationship, as you walk in that relationship, you need to always, I'm not saying have your guard up, because nobody wants to live like that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start seeing signs, when there's any kind of turbulence, don't sweep it under the rug. Like, address it. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people run from conflict and things like that, but a relationship is probably one of the most important things that's going to happen in your life. These are people that you're going to walk with for years. And I know when we get married, we would like to think that, it's until death do us part. But as soon as you feel that something's wrong, or something presents itself that feels funny or not okay, it's really important to address those things, because what can happen if you've just decided that you're just always going to love this person no matter what, then you become blind to certain things, and then it just mounts. The bad things just pile up and pile up and pile up, and sometimes you can't get back to that healthy place. And so for me, if you really love someone, or if someone really loves you, you'll keep an account of how healthy your relationship truly is. And if there's anything that needs to be dealt with, then you will deal with it. And I guess the last thing I'd like to say about that is, if you try to talk to your partner, you try to fix things, and they don't want to hear it, and they don't want to be a part of the solution, and they would rather see you squirm and struggle and wrestle with this, and they don't care because they don't want to deal with it, then you've got way bigger issues than you think you do.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the people that are brought into our lives, and I know everybody's got different thoughts about this, but my personal opinion is, most people that come into your life are not meant to stay forever.
Okay. Yeah, I come from the thought process that our relationships many times are mirrors to show things within us that need attention. I would have never learned, and I said this before, I would have never learned the things I did from my relationship from my parents, because my story is a little bit flipped different than yours. So I had to learn these things. I had to learn what it was to truly understand what self-love was. I had to learn what true boundaries were, what no, and X, Y, and Z, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I appreciate your story. I appreciate you sharing with us. And
yeah, thanks for having me on. I'd love to just say, if there's anything that I would want anyone to hear me say, it's please take the time to figure out how to love yourself. Because when you really love yourself and somebody does something to harm you, you're going to be the first one that goes, hey, like that was really not okay. That I shouldn't have to put up with that, because it's kind of akin to your children. You're not going to let people just treat your children however.
True.
You're going to protect them. And see, if you love yourself, you're also going to protect yourself. And I think that's very healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the signs to manifest that you do love yourself, is that you're going to take care of yourself. That it's no longer about everyone else, but you have some consideration for yourself. And but I really appreciate it. I'm glad Chelly introduced us. I'm glad you come in. You're in here almost every night. So you're part of the crew. And so when Chelly said, "Yo, you gotta have a conversation with her," I'm so glad you're willing to do it, because part of my goal is I just want to help people to heal themselves, and not think that they're healed, because there's one of my biggest pet peeves right now is that, of course, a lot of healing is talked about, but I think that it's also, especially when you're getting or meeting people, it's a hiding place for many people, because they present themselves as, oh, I'm healed, I'm working on my healing, but it's not actually true, because of the behavior that you see. You understand, that it's not true. And
I have to be honest with you. When I first came across you, I thought it was Chelly's live.
Oh, you did? Yeah, she's in here all the time. Yeah.
And Chelly is an amazing human being. She's an amazing woman. I got to know her 4 years ago because we both dealt with these certain types of people. And we were kind of in the same lives, looking to heal and understand what we had been through. And so when I saw her, I immediately stopped. And, I continue to follow you because I trust Chelly's, I trust the direction that she's going in. So I was like, okay, this guy's probably a nice guy. And, and I can follow him and maybe even see Chelly and here every once in a while, because we live on different parts of the United States, and I never got to actually meet her in person.
Yeah.
But I love her to death.
That's awesome. That's incredible. So if you can, in the chat, thank Chris for joining us. And you mind if they follow you?
Oh, I would love it. Yeah. I will say, everything I have is private, because this particular person just can't be trusted.
Yeah, I understand that.
So please don't be put off by that. But I'm always welcoming good people, and I know the people that follow you are good people.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, go follow Chris. Like she said, her page is private right now because of certain circumstances, which everybody should understand that's been here tonight. And that's wisdom. That's just simple as that. It's wisdom, And so I appreciate every single one of y'all that tuned in. If you have any questions or anything else that you want to talk about, you have to put it in the chat. I'm going to end this stream on YouTube. I appreciate every single person that tuned in. Thank you, Renee, for being over there. Okay.